Hey everybody, I'm Emily Moyer from Off Planet Radio, and I'm here with my good friend Dani Katz, and this is Words with Dani, episode number 4. And neither of us have any idea what's going on because we're trying to figure out if this is actually the reality that we live in. And I've determined that if you just turn the TV and the computer off, none of it exists, and Dani's still kind of in it and trying to.
Yeah, Emily has opted to avoid it. I'm just in like transpersonal empath shock, like shaking that this is how people are.
You saying you're a trans person?
Behaving.
I get it. Yes,
have you not seen me being criticized for being cisgender like 9 trillion times?
If we turn the microphone is on. I was making sure the microphone is on. So because I'm avoiding reality and she is steeped in it, she will tell me about reality and I will see what I have to say about it.
I don't know how steeped in it. I will say I have avoided 3D Matrix since Friday because it's scary and I can just feel it. I can feel it vibrationally. The rage is seeping through the atmosphere.
Yeah. I don't know. I just turn it off and I don't pay attention, so let's hear it.
I get it.
So, but I mean, you spend some time on the computer and on Facebook and Twitter. And
I spend some time on the computer, so this is how I've seen. I'll just give you the progression of my limited exposure, because like you, I am extremely limited in my exposure, but I am on the computer more than you since you're on a total blackout these days. So I'll just lay the groundwork. So I'd heard a lot about the
Kavanonsense
thing. Right. And I hadn't tuned in to really like hear him or her or whatnot. The first time I heard him, just for full transparency, the first time I heard his testimony, I'm like, wow, I don't really know the details, but this looks like a guy, feels like someone who's telling the truth and feels like his life is on the line. Then I heard her speak like a bit trembling baby, and I was like, I don't even know what I'm watching, but this didn't happen and this is absurd. So from my exposure, that was sort of my sense. And then there was like all the articles that went back and forth between us about the backstory and the Stanford research and the CIA and blah, yeah. So I've just chosen to stay out of it because I've never seen such hysteria. Like it's gone to like, Orange Alert times a million.
So they do 9/11.
Yes.
Yeah.
More so though.
Yeah. So it's like a super social cultural 9/11 as opposed to like a nation patriot,
I mean, they're still engineered by like nefarious powers.
It's still a false flag.
It's totally still a false flag. It's
still a false flag and a hoax and has holographic planes and directed energy weapons and all that stuff.
All of those things. But the trauma meter that's been clicked on is like off the chain. So what happened was I'd been staying out of it. I really didn't know what was going on. And on Wednesday, I saw a friend's Facebook post, which was like, it's absurd to purport that men are afraid right now. And then it was like several inches of like rape statistics and assault statistics and like the buzz toxic masculinity and privilege and entitlement. And then the end was like, so I'm sorry, men have no idea what fear is. And I was like, it struck me as weird because this very friend of mine called me in tears like 2 months ago when her absolute best friend was accused of rape from a former student at the art college where he taught. She had already graduated. She had texted him to see if he wanted to get a drink, had sex with him, woke him up the next morning to have sex again, and then a week later reported it to the police as rape. So this happened, and this very friend who posted this called me in tears about this whole situation only a few months ago.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she didn't believe her then?
No.
Right. So now we must believe her.
Well, she totally didn't believe her. And also she was heartbroken for her friend and that his career was on the line, his reputation was on the line. Like this was all very real. So she posted this thing, men can't possibly be afraid. And I was a little thrown off and I'm not tracking this particular story. And so I posted, can't they coexist though? Like I was really careful. I'm like, isn't it possible, can't men have their own experience of fear while women are having their own flavor of fear? Her response was, no, I don't think so. And then it was just this insane dogpile on what an insensitive asshole I am. And I should have given her safe space and I'm infringing upon it. And the only correct response to a courageous post like this is for me to shut up. And it was just dogpile on me and totally backing it. And I'm like, I don't know. I literally, it was
Well,
such cognitive dissonance.
it's kind of like that senator, that congresswoman from Hawaii, the Mazie stepbrother, who was like, the only thing for men to do at this point is to shut up and step up. So it was like the same thing, but you're not a man.
It is exactly the same thing. The court of public opinion or individual iterations of it have decided this is the appropriate etiquette for response now, and there's only one answer, which is fucking crazy. So, and
you at this point didn't know about the fact that Trump had made this, right?
No, I didn't know, because so that was the thing, it was complete cognitive dissonance where I was like,
say what happened, because you might know what I'm talking about.
Okay, so the next day I found out that Trump had said in a speech,
a few days before.
The day that she posted it. This was on a Wednesday.
Right.
Apparently that morning Trump had said young men are afraid. That's what caused the whole thing. I didn't get that information until the next day. But it had me, the dissonance is like, I've watched all my girlfriends go crazy this past 10 days. Is basically what this is all about, where I'm like, wow, where we used to have different opinions, but we could still hold a space of like peace and diplomacy. I've watched everyone go off the deep end, and I could, watching it with her and like, so we're rewriting history. This didn't happen to your friend. This is so weird. And then understanding, because Trump said that, now like that button has been pushed, like insert automatic psycho reaction that 100% of everything comes out of Trump's mouth is cause for psychotic meltdown.
I wonder if the word Trump is an actual mind control trigger.
At this point it is.
But it's become that. But I'm wondering if that, like, so are you
Trump card?
Are you familiar with like the Illuminati card game?
No.
Right? And so like the Illuminati card game was this thing that like came about in like late 80s, right? That has basically predicted everything that has happened. It's even predicted like Ron Paul and Alex Jones and 9/11 and all these false flags and all these things that have happened in the world. Like there's a card for them. And there is a Trump card, right? And Trump, there's just that social term, the Trump card.
Right, there's always a Trump card in every
So
day.
like, I'm wondering if like, you know, he's been present in our minds since the mid 80s as a popular figure.
Right.
Right. So I'm just wondering if like, I mean, it would be an interesting test, just to like push a button and have the word Trump said and see what happens to somebody's nervous system.
Well, of course. I mean, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think I'm telling you what the results of your test would be.
Right.
Yes, that is at this point, like the response of like psycho meltdown is inextricably bound to the vibrational frequency of the word.
We talked about that when you were on our show, the way something's like the mouth is like a cathedral and the way it vibrates.
Sure, because I'm watching my friend. We had this actual experience with her best friend.
Yeah.
And something clicked over in her brain where that never happened.
Right.
And now this is the world.
So it also acts as like a mind erase. So this really, we're dealing with the mind control of like amnesia and then triggered behavior.
Exactly. And then the audacity of like, because women are afraid, now they have like exclusive rights to the emotion called fear. And any man who says he has fear is a liar.
And so
a toxic masculine oppressor.
Have you ever heard like the mnemonic where fear stands for false evidence appearing real?
Yes.
So that is what we're actually dealing with here, is false evidence appearing real.
It doesn't even appear real,
but they're thinking it does, right? Like they're in their head. So like,
it's so twisted and like this whole story is so manufactured. It's so forced distorted. It is crazy.
Yeah.
It is just, I know you and I are the same on this, where it's like there's not an ounce of veracity to any part of it. It's so badly pasted together.
It is really bad.
But it's been so effective in making people go ballistic.
Yeah. It is you know, and we talked about they're going ballistic for all the wrong reasons.
100% the wrong reasons.
There's actually like, I mean, I have found a happier life in not going ballistic anymore, right? But that doesn't mean that my logical brain can't see that there aren't reasons to go ballistic. And so now we have this situation where like, now we have a problem because we do have a criminal in the Supreme Court. Right.
But if we'd focused on his criminal aspects, if we'd focused on the actual facts of his history and where his allegiances have been and the actions that he's taken, if we focused on the facts at hand, then the people might have taken it all more seriously. But because the women went crazy over a unicorn fairy story badly told and became so like righteous in their ridiculousness, I feel like they backed everyone into the corner where everyone's like, "Fuck you!"
Well, now there's always people who want him because because they don't, right? So there's always
because
people
they want to piss off the lefties,
right? So
when no one should want him.
No one should want him. Like this, like that's the whole, So, I mean, the problem is that
they made it ridiculous.
Neither the Republicans nor the Democrats, and certainly not the media, care. They are enemies of freedom,
right?
And so they're interested. Like I could even buy a story where the right and left colluded to get this man who's an enemy of freedom into it by creating this storm around it to make the fight about something that isn't real. So now everybody, like, it's been proven publicly that nobody actually cares about the Fourth Amendment. They care more about finding out if somebody grew up someone in high school. So the Fourth Amendment be damned. We have somebody on there who's an enemy of freedom in every way, who wrote the Patriot Act, who believes in torture, who doesn't believe in the Fourth Amendment, who thinks open surveillance is okay. All this kind of stuff.
If we could have kept the conversation on those things, I think it would be infinitely less likely that he's there now. But then
that would open a discussion for the problem again with those things, and neither the left nor the right want that because they both believe in all those things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, but it's such a bummer just to see the left and women drive this forward so mindlessly, like let themselves be so controlled and manipulated. And I know that your theory is that like it was a left-right collusion to put him there so they create this story. Emily, this story is so lame and so flimsy and so nothing. But they could have put anyone in there with zero collusion and come up with something better,
right?
Probably.
But at this point, like, we've moved into this phase of revelation of the method, and the method is to mock the people while you enslave them. And that's what this is. Like, these people asked for this. This is what they're going to get. They begged for the people begged for this, and so this is what they're going to get. Ha ha. That's it. That's how they feel.
But the problem is that we're all the people. Like, the problem is we're being shoved into this police. Like, it's been my issue from the get-go. Can we talk about what's really going on? Can we talk about being like herded into camps and police state conditions?
Maybe this is just like, before we started recording, you and I were talking about there's like this separation going on, right? And like maybe it even works like this. Maybe to avoid all that, all we're going to have to do is walk away. And these people who can insist on continuing to go into the city and go like every day and protest in the streets and march and whatever, like there's going to be police state there. And those of us who just wander off and don't care, maybe it's not going to be.
I mean, it's possible, and I'm open to it, and I'm totally availing myself to that reality. But is it also like a coincidence that this week that all of a sudden that like ridiculous criticism of my blog is on the front page, is page 1 of my Google search? Because that's not like, that fucks with my ability, or that has the potential to fuck with my ability to make a living, to have a platform.
Right. So I think the whole thing is that, so I'm not saying what I was saying. I'm not saying that I completely believe what I just said. I was just offering that as like a possibility.
But I do believe that if we live into these possibilities,
right. So let's live into it. So
exactly.
I think some of this is that like those of us who are reliant on the matrix to make our living, right? Like, I think like those of us who have these recognitions, these awarenesses, we're going to have to start separating ourselves further and further from the matrix and the way we make our living.
Well, that goes back to like the whole Derek Sprouse, like gray market and black market.
Right.
And I agree with all that. This is part of the larger conversation of deplatforming content creators, and this does involve both you and I,
right?
Which is this push from the left to deplatform content creators who aren't parroting the retard narrative.
Right.
I'm sorry, people are going to freak out that I said retard narrative. The let's steal your every freedom narrative because your feelings got hurt when you were 13,
right?
Or whatever it is.
Yeah. So I mean, I think just you're dealing with Google, which Google is, so just so you guys know, Dani had a thing happen this week where she, for a random reason, Googled herself. And what came up on, one of the things that came up on the first page, like didn't make any sense why it was there. It was somebody else's current commentary on an article she had written 40 years ago. Right. And it didn't have very many views or anything like that. It didn't make sense why it would be on the first page. But it was.
Yeah, it made no sense. It was nothing. There was no heat on this. It wasn't timely. Like in the past 4.5 years, I've had a zillion more relevant things, but this article or this criticism that's on the first page calls me a hate monger, calls me a homophobe, calls me a transphobe, like all of those keywords that slander people.
And we already established that she's a trans person, and so she's not. Right? I'm kidding. But but the point is that there's something going on with the algorithm.
The algorithm's fucking with
the algorithm is there's something in the algorithm to make the shaming of people who are opposing a mainstream narrative in any way rise to the top. Without the actual article she wrote was not at the top, but somebody's criticism of her is at the top, right? And it was like on somebody's private blog. It didn't
some random blogger. Yeah, exactly.
So like, but that's the issue is that like, we've become dependent. Google is the matrix. Like that's the point of Google is to be evil, right? Everyone tells you like they say they're not what you are, all that kind of stuff. Like they're funded by DARPA and all that kind of stuff. They're very intertwined with the government. So like, yeah, it's not surprising that they would do that. They're trying, they're recognizing you as an enemy combatant, and they're trying to say, if you want to be on the reservation, step in line. If not, get off the reservation. Right. Yeah.
So this is an issue when it comes to like, is it as simple as just stepping away? And we can sort of keep that, possibility open as something to look into, but it's also a very real consideration, this deplatforming conversation that's going on the sidelines and being like, this is what the whole free speech conversation is about right now. But people are so quick to say like, Alex Jones is a hate monger or is an alt-right extremist or, like the Data and Society
like, even
report.
If he wasn't, who cares?
Well, of course, who cares? But like, this is the push that we need to be aware of because now that he's been taken off, like the precedent.
By the way, I think it's staged. I think he's in on it. I think that this is something to get people to be nervous about losing their platform, so to get them to step into line.
But then how does that explain the Data and Society report that they just put out?
I'm not connecting those two things. I'm saying like that Alex Jones has been in collusion, in my opinion, with intelligence agencies and corporations that work with intelligence agencies and the government for a very, very, very long time.
I buy that.
Yeah. And that, they don't want to have to go about directly censoring people. Because if you do it to too many people, then people are going to get mad and fight back.
So you're saying this is like a scare tactic to get people to self-censor?
People don't want to lose their Twitter accounts or their PayPal processing. Mostly, right? So like they did this like slow drip with him, and then the last thing that just happened is he can't process through PayPal anymore.
Right. That was the latest.
So people where you can get people to change their behavior by threatening their way of making a living. So rather than telling people you can't say something,
this is like a giant warning.
It's a giant warning. It's a giant warning.
Okay.
And I guarantee you, like he's been paid a lot of money to do this. Like, where did his super fancy studio come from over the last several years, right?
Well, he has a huge audience.
Huge following, but like he's had a huge following forever. And then just over the last couple of years, suddenly there's huge studio that's getting better, bigger and better all the time and all this kind of stuff. And, or whatever it is, like he's a made man. He's a company man, okay? And so the Data Society thing, I think that's just another thing. It's another warning. It's like, look guys, we're letting you know that if you interview these people, if you they're trying to deter people from having conversations with someone, because like if you saw like Tim Pool's videos on it, he's like, I don't even know any of these people that they're saying that.
It was so badly put together.
What he's saying is that how he figured out they made this connection is that like he had at some point been on a show with somebody who also at some point had been on a show with them.
Yeah, they were beyond reaching.
So what they're basically trying to say is we don't want you communing with the other camp because you might find that someone in the other camp has a point that is valid, or if you can let your bullshit down for 1 second and sit and listen, but okay, I don't agree with that, but it actually makes sense and it doesn't really bother me that they do that, so we can coexist.
Can you imagine if people would let their bullshit down and listen right now? Like really, like how amazing that would be if people could just listen.
Right.
That would be fantastic.
Well, it's really hard to listen when you're uncomfortable. Like the whole point, like to stay, like when you're in conversation with somebody, like really the best way to have a conversation is to like sit there on the mat, face to face, looking at each other, and be able to be uncomfortable and stay on mat. But everybody gets so reactive and like can't stand to be in the, you know what I mean? Like they just jump off right away and don't ever develop a rhythm for conversing that actually allows you to get to someplace where you can solve something.
Well, and it's also because they don't have the intention of listening from the get-go. It was like we were talking about before, like Bill Maher and Steve Bannon. Like Bill Maher was not interested in hearing Bannon on any level. He wasn't interested in understanding. He was interested in like shaming and like spewing his emotion on him and letting him know how much he didn't like him.
He was interested in virtue signaling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like, let me see what this guy has to say and where can we go with this conversation that's interesting. And it's that willingness and that openness that like isn't really being demonstrated. But going back to, okay, we knew we were going to be all over the place. But
we're all over the place. We're aware of it.
We're all over the place.
We don't need any notes letting us know we're all over the place. That was just kind of the random energy of the day. Yeah.
Venus is retrograde. We have new moon tomorrow.
Yes.
We have various other girl things happening. So, but what you mentioned about data and society and like this is a warning. So Eric Weinstein, and I know you're not as high on the IDW as I have been in the past, but even as I started to sort of like
intellectual dark web,
even as my crushes started to fade a little bit, I still like had a.
Dani has a thing for ugly Jewish men.
No, it just had a major crush on Eric Weinstein.
Right, ugly Jewish man, brilliant.
Well, and Majid because he's so sexy.
Yeah. Majid, well, he's
snappy
sexy.
dresser.
Majid is
yeah,
sexy.
Majid is just I just totally objectify him because as eye candy. But yeah, Eric Weinstein like has been on this for sure pedestal for me. But then his last Rubin show, which just sucked on a lot of levels.
Dave Rubin is gone.
Dave Rubin?
Yeah, he's gotten really boring.
Did I just call him a different name?
No, you called him Dave Rubin.
Okay. It's that kind of day. But he said, he was like, well, if you speak your truth these days, like it is absolutely life ruining. And I was like, why are you programming everyone?
Yeah.
And so in that moment, he just told everyone,
not to
if you're going to speak your truth, you are going to 100% have your life ruined. And you know, with my language thing, it like my whole body contracted.
And that's actually
like, cancel clear.
That is actually 100% opposite of what's of reality.
Well, this is like when you said the thing about Alex Jones and that being a giant warning, that's what popped into my mind. I'm like, oh, because he's doing the same thing now. And then he tweeted something else that was like, well, you know, where's our savior?
Like the intellectual dark web, in my opinion, is funded by the same shit Alex Jones is funded by.
Well, I'm starting to think that they are.
Israel lobby. Stratfor. All pro-Israel.
I don't know enough about it, but I do know that there's zero criticism for Israel, and there's like 100% backing for Israel on the IDW. I can't say 100%, but it does seem like that's the majority.
98.
But then after the Kavanonsense thing on Friday, Eric Weinstein posted like something, I'm paraphrasing, but something along the lines of like, where's our magical healer to save us? And I'm like, are you really like, right now, today, this news day, now you're putting forth our old religious savior narrative into everyone's consciousness, and that like we can't save ourselves. Like, Eric, what happened?
But that's the biggest program that they want people. They want people under savior programming all the time.
Of course, because then we won't be proactive, and we'll just sit around whining about our problems and like jerking off about how smart we are from all the different angles we talk about our problems.
Circle, self-contained flatulence. Yeah.
And we're not talking solutions. It's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah. So, and he's friends with Peter Thiel and all that kind of stuff.
Well, he works for Peter Thiel, and I'm very curious as to why Peter Thiel has just relocated here to LA, and I believe Weinstein followed him, which is all the more like...
And Peter Thiel's scariest thing that he does is Palantir, which is future predicting software, right? And so Brett Weinstein say that, see how people respond to it, right? Then know what to do next. Your next move is going to be this. Your next move, watch how people are responding to the intellectual dark web. How much truth do you have to give them? How much can you still hold back? What nooks and crannies do you have to open for discussion? And what doors can you keep shut? That's what Palantir is for.
I'm so creeped out.
I could do that, but then there we'd open up a whole new window for right?
Okay, so I just want to go back to the Kavanonsense. I don't even know what to do with that, just to pick up the other trails of it so we can tie it up.
Tie it on?
Pick a direction. Tie it in some direction and move on. Which was seeing all of the celebrity women's response to it. And because what I'm watching is the narrative that's being spun. And the gist being that like a culture is enslaved by their narratives. They're shaped by their narratives. It's all the myths. Like we just live our mythologies. And the mythology that's being written around this Me Too, Kavanonsense, whatever, is so flimsy and lame and illogical and nonsensical. And I heard so many women say they had all their like ridiculous reasons, and it was like, if you vote for Kavanaugh, you hate women. That logic stands up nowhere,
right.
on no dimension, ever. It is not true. It's ridiculous. I don't care how loudly you say it, or like how pretty you look when you say it, or if you're on some late night talk show. It's actually not true. It's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Right. I mean, like, so clearly, like, most of the Republicans who voted for Kavanaugh, like, the reason that they're voting for Kavanaugh is because they believe in a police state and they know he does. Right. And actually, hate to break it to you lefties, but most of the Democrats believe in a police state too, especially at this point, because they've lied about so much shit that they need a police state to hold their shit together.
Which is why the New York Times editorializes the way they do, and Washington Post. That's why everyone is manipulating your news, is because they don't give a shit about your freedom. Like, get it already.
Right. So that's the reason that Republicans voted for Kavanaugh. They don't, whatever. He touched
It's not
women,
because
he
they
didn't
hate
touch
women.
Right,
The narcissism of the way this story is written, that all these people who are choosing the Supreme Court justice, their number one consideration is whether there's any veracity to a woman's feelings about her high school assault. Like, it's crazy to me that women could, with a straight face, believe that that's how these decisions are being made.
How flimsy it was that, like, she got up there and she didn't even align her witnesses before she said it, right? Because
no one backed her.
No one backed her. So, but I actually think that's intentional. Like, I don't think there was ever any intention of anything being proven. This is about, like, can we actually, like, get people all whipped up over absolutely nothing?
Right. And the answer is
can
yes.
we actually,
so it's like a social experiment?
It's a social experiment. Like, it's a piece.
It's like, how dumb are people and how much control
they're
can
mocking.
wield?
Because it's the mocking. Like we've been talking about. It's completely like, oh, look at you fools. Like, you just completely let us run you around roughshod for a month with no evidence, right? And everything is about, like, believing her, right? Like, thinking, like, do you believe her or do you believe him? Guys, said it before, say it again. Belief is the enemy of knowing. And the only way you ever know something is evidence, right? And so there is no evidence. So this is they have anytime you have to hashtag something, like, it's
not true.
It's almost like the pound sign, like, somehow does the thing that, like, normally knowing would do, right? Like,
it's code for mind control at this point. The hashtag is mind control me too. Mind control Black Lives Matter. Mind control separation program X.
Mind control walk away. Mind control all that kind of stuff, right? So it's because you're not really walking away, you're just walking to the other side of the pen.
You're staying in the same page.
So so that's
okay, so going back to just tying up the rest of the Kavanonsense, which neither of us believe in.
Apparently we need a really big tie.
Well, just because I want to go to my Lady Gaga thing, because I had brought it up with you the week before, which was before A Star Is Born launch, and she gave her ridiculous...
Apparently there's a new movie with Lady Gaga. I didn't know.
I hear it's really good. I liked the Barbra Streisand version. Anyway, with Chris Christopherson, but that is neither here nor there. I saw the Lady Gaga documentary a while ago, and I was struck by what a pathetic, whiny victim she is from beginning to end, and how for such an empowered and successful star with, like, such an interesting career, that's not what she focused on or talked about in the documentary. The documentary was only about, like, a dead aunt that she'd never met and made an album for, and, like, a hip problem, and, like, sad, my life is so hard, feel sorry for me. And I was like, oh, what an interesting way to, like, indoctrinate the public with the victim story that is driving everything. And then I was thinking, and I brought this up to you, about when Madonna put out Truth or Dare, which was like, this was Lady Gaga's version, where she was so empowered and she was such a badass, and there was nothing victim-y in that. Even when she did go to her chiropractor, she was, like, laughing the whole time, and Warren Beatty was making jokes
even
about
when
the
she talked about, like, her mother dying when she was a kid. She was basically talking about how that really, like, is the driving force of why she is what she is now. Right?
How it fueled her.
And she did talk about some of the difficulties with her father and stuff like that, but it was like, these are the circumstances of my life. It's part of my story. Here I am. But it wasn't like, wham, feel bad for me. Wham, yeah.
I've never gotten that vibe. So I was just comparing it as far as, like, the larger cultural meta-narratives, and how in the 80s with Madonna, it was like, women were very empowered and like the shoulder pads and like the
Yeah.
supermodels. And it was like just a whole different, there wasn't, you know, women were empowered and women, you know, did have it, you know, they had that attitude and a lot of confidence.
Yeah.
And I was just comparing that to now with this Lady
You think
Gaga
about those
Weinstein.
other like late 70s, 80s kind of women, like your Chrissy Hynde and your Pat Benatar and your Madonna and all that stuff. They were no one's big.
Yeah. Yes, Cyndi Lauper.
Cyndi Lauper, like there's tons of
Blondie.
them. Indy, yeah.
Deborah
It goes on and on and on.
Yeah, exactly.
And all those women had stuff happen to them. And Deborah Harry had a world. She got picked up by Ted Bundy. You know what I mean? But she she didn't never talk about it until many, many years later,
like,
and not in the
Belinda
victim.
Carlisle and the Go-Go's. It's all like, and that gave us the energy and the impetus to like achieve.
I wanted to be Madonna so bad. Yeah. Yeah.
So I was just comparing those narratives and the agents of the larger meta programming machine and the mind control machine, because I did see Lady Gaga on Friday night explaining to the world how trauma works in the brain, and selling the Kavanonsense story.
So
more and more.
Can you explain that she?
I mean, it's not even that interesting. She was on some late night show, and in this very with so much passion was explaining how trauma works in the brain, and it was how she was explaining why the Ford person sounded like a 5-year-old.
So basically, she was explaining compartmentalization and MK Ultra mind control, but making it sound like, oh, but this is why we should believe her.
Exactly.
Instead of like, oh, actually, this is a mind control program and this is bullshit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The way we're seeing all the celebrities sell it, because the celebrities are the people who tell everyone what to think, and it seems to work, which is so nuts.
Right.
So that's kind of all I wanted to say about that.
I wonder, like, if you broke down the word celebrity, what are we dealing with?
Like, the etymology
of celebrity. Maybe that will be the after segment.
Oh yeah. Let's do that.
Yeah, there will be an after segment for the patrons, and so we're going to deal with a little of that. Maybe we'll
celebrate.
Right.
That doesn't help our cause.
Right.
But truth is the cause. So whatever. We'll look it up.
We'll get into it.
So the other thing that I want to talk about was the Louis C.K. thing.
Okay.
Because he came back this week, and there was this. I sent this to you. Put it. It was from Instagram, and this is what clued me into this happening. This actress Zoe Lister-Jones had posted this article, and it says, the headline is, Louis C.K. performs at Comedy Cellar again, appears to have learned nothing. And then she goes on to like freak out. Wouldn't you say? I mean, you read her post about it, about like, this guy's sexual misconduct is over the top and the toxic masculinity, and it's offensive, and he hasn't been gone from the public sphere long enough, and he's not apologetic enough, and he hasn't lashed himself and whipped himself enough. So that
he hasn't been castrated. He has
exactly, and he needs to address it. And it's like, again, who's laid out the etiquette for how people are supposed to handle their public shamings? And I find this one particularly interesting because Louis C.K. didn't fuck with anyone. Louis C.K. jerked off in front of other people after asking if it was okay with them if he jerked off in front of them. He didn't touch them. He wasn't engaged with them in a naked way. He didn't block the door. He didn't physically restrain them.
He didn't touch them at all.
No. So I remember when he issued his public apology, and I thought, this is overkill. Like, why are you even kowtowing to this? It's nothing to apologize for. If you decide to jerk off in front of me right now and I'm not into it, I could be like, Emily, this is making me really uncomfortable. Could you stop? Or I'm going to leave. Like, I have so many options. I'm not a victim. And then I heard Joe Rogan talking about it, and he was like, man, I mean, that takes a lot of balls considering what he did to all those women. And I was like, and we already know that Joe Rogan's a shill, but the reason why I'm bringing it up is because I want people to be attuned to how they're being fucking programmed and how the story is being maligned. Joe Rogan said he did what he did to all those women, which makes women victims, which P.S. isn't empowering. Like, that's why I'm not down with signing on to any of this shit, because I'm not a victim. And so the way that he's telling this story and shaming his friend and selling him down the river because he did this to all these women when he didn't do anything, it's like sending women back to what? Like the Stone Ages?
It's like saying women don't have legs and couldn't have gotten up and walked out of the room.
Right. Like we don't have the wherewithal to take care of ourselves because we're like infantilized monkey morons who don't know how to deal. Like, that's what I'm not getting about this whole thing.
Yeah.
I'm done ranting.
All right. Yeah. No, I mean, it is like, it's interesting, like just this reaction that people have an idea that there is an etiquette that they're allowed to impose on other people for how they will or will not deal with being part of society.
Right.
So yeah, I find all this stuff annoying. Like if you don't like Louis C.K., don't listen to him.
Right, but it's
there's that.
But to say that, like, it's weird, these standards. Like, as gymnasts, we knew what we were being judged on. Like, your legs have to be straight, your toes have to be pointed, like, you have to stick your landings, you can't wobble. Like, what are the factors there that have determined that he did it wrong? As far as I know, he went to a comedy club and he did a set. Like, it still has to be a problem. Women still want to milk the trauma and the victimization out of this scenario. Why? What is that doing for anyone? Like, is that fun? I'm watching all my girlfriends just walk around like cortisol depleted, telomere shortening, like psychopath freak shows. Why? I would think we need more light.
I was just going to say the same thing. We're going to get some light.
I mean, we don't have a lot of light.
No.
We should wrap it.
We should wrap it, probably.
Do we have anything?
Was there something we wanted to talk about
there was binary code.
The frequency fear, the either or.
The either or.
Okay, and this takes us back a little bit to what you were talking about the
can't men be afraid and women be afraid?
Right, can't men be afraid? Right, like can't men be afraid and women be afraid? Like, does somebody have the patent on the frequency of fear? Right, and like that's the radio station only for women to broadcast. But I think we were talking more about the Kavanonsense or Trump, like people saying, okay, if you voted for Kavanaugh, you hate women, or if you voted for Trump, you're a racist, right? And so maybe people voted for Trump because they have a small business and they don't like Obamacare. Maybe somebody voted for Kavanaugh because they love the police state, right? So we are locked into this way of thinking that is very either or. Either you are this, either you like women, or you voted for Kavanaugh.
But why are intelligent people buying into it? It's like, okay, I get it. The mind control media manipulation machine is writing this ridiculous narrative. Why are intelligent people relinquishing their critical thinking to say, yes, that's correct?
Think of it like the media is casting a spell that is like a binary code for a computer where all you have is ones and zeros. So you have either this or that. There is no two. There is no something, right?
So is this like part of like the transhumanist movement?
Yes, this is like an either or world is much easier to control. It's much easier to like know. The most dangerous thing to the system is someone who's free range or a free agent, someone who don't know what they're going to do next. And if people know that there's only this choice or that choice, it's very easy to predict what people are going to choose. But when you live, so they're trying to turn this into, but they can't actually do it. We have to volunteer to participate in an either or world when this is a both and world.
But that's what's so that's the disturbing piece, is witnessing people acquiescing their complexity, their nuance, and really, I just realized it's their people are relinquishing.
Humans are complex.
Their
they're layered. They're juicy. They're interesting. They're thick. They're all this kind of stuff.
Paradoxical. We're unresolvable. Complexity that's shifting and changing at every moment.
And this is a both and. We were talking about this. This is a both and world. Both things can be true. You can
Men are afraid and women are afraid.
You can love women and believe in a police state. So vote for Kavanaugh.
Exactly.
Right?
You can love Trump and love black people.
And something else too. And you can also be like into tranny porn or whatever, right?
Exactly.
So, but we live in a fractal, holographic, multidimensional, constantly shifting, prismatic, kaleidoscopic kind of world that is impossible to control. The only way you can get control of people is if you limit their options. And an either or world makes it so boys over here, girls over here. One line A and line B.
Is it not freaking you out to see intelligent people buy into this frequency? I'm alarmed.
I mean, I think I've been looking at it for so long now, and because when I started to have these realizations, I really I hermited, I pulled back from the world, and I just observed it,
right?
And I was just like, whoa! It was like, and everyone thought I was crazy, right? But I came to terms with it.
No, I get it. I mean, obviously, I've been watching it with the Trump thing, and it's been alarming, in the way that it has. I think, as I said to you before, it's just like the way this has sucked in, like, the women in my life who are straddling both realities, who are like, their allegiance was to the left, but they hadn't lost it completely, and there was still some critical thinking. And I've seen this particular one suck those women in, and it's just like from a very human, like friend place. I'm like, oh
so
man,
these people,
that
so
sucks.
this is the separating of reality that we've been talking about, right? Most people are going to be assimilated into the either or world, right? And we're going to have to pick our co-pilots and our journey mates for our both and world and go that way. And it's going to be a smaller population, but that's what it is. And so as you know, I pulled myself back and I observed all this and I felt it was crazy. And when I decided to branch to the world, I've been going around and trying to collect the people who I know believe in a both and universe, a both and world. And that's it. And so that's who I'll be with when this separation happens. And either or people will be fighting in the streets, arguing over this kind of stuff. And we're going to have to just let them.
Right.
Like
are we going to physically mobilize to like the same geography? Like
I'm more and more feeling like that's going to have to happen. Yeah, like not necessarily on a permanent thing, not like where we all just go lock ourselves in a compound, but we're going to have to make places where we can come together on a regular basis.
We need our safe spaces. Like we need.
She's an SJW. To go along with all the other stuff. She's a Nazi and an alt-righter and a racist and a transphobe and an SJW.
And also a trans person.
A trans, right? Transphobic, trans person, right?
But you know, like, I mean, you and Sally and I are a little bit more open about it, but like, it's mostly friends who will like text me secretly. Like, no one's weighing in on these threads to be like, I agree with you, Dani, men are afraid, because that is just way too incendiary these days. So it's all coming through private texts, which is weird that's like what's so offensive to say. But then like my 3D friends who think this way, I have some friends like where we're out having coffee and we're like whispering and talking behind our hands, less like any nearby SJWs think to stone us to death or something.
I just say it all out loud. I give no shits. I'm not afraid. You know what I mean? Like if that's how I'm going to go out, it'll be a blaze of glory, right? You know what I mean? But yeah, no, I think that's just it. I think they want you to be afraid and want you to be small. Like I just say it, my normal tone of voice. I talk about SJWs out in public. My own family are SJWs and I talk about it, and you know, like I'm surprised I haven't been stoned from inside my own house. But
the dog piles this week have gotten a lot more like vicious and like crazy.
Well, I've noticed as I've been out for all my walks and runs this week that like all the dog walkers have like 10 dogs, right? So like the same people are controlling all the dogs, and so that's why it seems like the dog pile, because the same trainer is sicking them all in at the same time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, that is what is
so
happening.
Like they have someone that they follow on Twitter, and that person snaps their fingers and it's dog pile on Dani. Yeah. So symbolic in the real world. Like I've been seeing, like literally every dog walker I've seen this week has had like 10 dogs on their leash.
Oh, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
The simulation's so funny that way.
Yeah, the simulation will show you your reality in multiple ways until you get it.
Yeah.
Just like your naturopath. Like, right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Like, so, all right, guys. So this pretty much wrapped. I know we were all over the place, but it was kind of fun. I don't know.
I had fun.
Yeah, I
don't know. I don't know if any was trackable.
Right.
And also, I just want to acknowledge, like, it's such a like I'm feeling very like destabilized and uncontextualized. Like, I don't even know how to wrap myself.
I think that's how people are feeling.
Right,
so, like. Be patient, you know what I mean? Sometimes we'll get shows like this, but we've enjoyed hearing the things you guys have weighed in about, the criticisms and the compliments. So thank you, and we will be back in a couple of weeks with another Words with Dani. And this time, head on over to patreon.com/offplanetmedia or patreon.com/Dani Katz, where you will find the bonus segment from this episode. See you next time, guys. You can find me at offplanetradio.com, or for a health and wellness consultation, Facebook, Emily Moyer, and you can find her at DaniKatz.com. See you next time.
Bye. Woo-hoo.